At the end of the season of 2022, how did the 10 Football Bowl Subdivision conferences compare to each other? This is the Gridiron-Connoisseur. I present the results of my objective formula that will provide an unbiased answer. The following is a ranking of the 10 Football Bowl Subdivision conferences. Those include the American Athletic, Atlantic Coast, Big 10, Big 12, Conference USA, Mid-American, Mountain West, Pacific 12, Southeastern, and Sunbelt. The criteria used in this objective formula include the following: wins and losses versus out-of-conference opponents. Wins on the road are worth the most. Wins at neutral sites are worth less. Wins at home are worth even less. Wins versus other FBS opponents are worth much more. Wins over FCS opponents are worth much less. Wins over other conferences champions, including the winners of other conferences' divisions, earn bonuses for the victorious conference. The 10 conferences are ranked and listed in ascending order. At number 10, the Mid-American Conference finished last among the 10 FBS conferences. The MAC did win 4 of its 6 bowl games. The MAC also finished 1-1 versus Conference USA and 2-2 versus the Mountain West Conference. The MAC is the only FBS conference without a win against any other FBS conference's champion or even over a second-place team in another conference. Additionally, the MAC had a losing record against 7 of the other FBS conferences. Number 9, the Mountain West Conference scored a few notable victories. Those included defeating the Mid-American Conference's champion in addition to the second-place team in Conference USA twice. The Mountain West Conference compiled a record of 1-14 versus the Power 5 conferences. Also, the Mountain West Conference endured 3 losses to FCS members. Finally, former member BYU swept all 3 meetings against current members of the Mountain West Conference. Coming in at number 8 is Conference USA. CUSA did split its 4 matchups against the Atlantic Coast Conference, as well as splitting its 6 bowl games. However, CUSA did not record any wins against any other conference's champions. The only notable out-of-conference win was Texas El Paso's win over the eventual winner of the Mountain West Conference's Mountain Division. Additionally, CUSA finished 0-10 versus the other 5 Power 5 conferences. Number 7 was the Sunbelt Conference. The Sunbelt Conference had victories over the champions of the American Athletic Conference and Conference USA. Additionally, the Sunbelt Conference won 2/3 of its 18 matchups with CUSA. However, against the Power 5, the Sunbelt Conference had a record of only 2 wins and 12 losses. 14 of the Sunbelt Conference's 34 out-of-conference victories were against FCS opponents. The 6th ranked conference is the Pacific 12. The Pac-12's upper echelon flopped in out-of-conference games. The Pac-12's champion, Utah, lost to a member of the Big Ten that finished third in its division. Additionally, Utah lost to an SEC team who finished with a losing record. Southern California, the runner-up in the Pac-12, lost to the American Athletic Conference's champion in the Cotton Bowl. Oregon, one of the three teams tied for second place, was demolished 49-3 by the eventual champion of the SEC. The Pac-12 did manage to dominate the Mountain West Conference again, winning 7 of the 9 matchups. Those included 2 victories over the Mountain West Conference's champion and 1 against the runner-up. The American Athletic Conference finished the highest among the group of 5 conferences. The AAC continued its late-season climb up the rankings by beating out the Pacific 12 by a hair, to 1/1000th of a point. The AAC beat out the Pac-12 by the tip of its collective nose with wins over the champions of the Big 12 and Conference USA. Additionally, the AAC had 2 victories against the second-place teams in Conference USA, as well as against the runner-up in the Pac-12. Finally, the American Athletic Conference finished 4-3 in bowl games. The Atlantic Coast Conference finished 4th. Florida State won 2 games versus SEC opponents, one of which was over LSU, the eventual SEC Western Division champions. However, the ACC dropped 7 of the other 9 meetings versus SEC opponents. Those included the ACC champion Clemson losing to 2 SEC members. One of those 2, South Carolina, finished 4-4 in SEC games. The ACC had an even record versus the Pac-12, splitting its 2 bowl matchups. The ACC went 3-2 versus the Big 12. The ACC did win 6 of its 7 games versus the American Athletic Conference, including both bowl matchups. As the third highest conference, the Big Ten did manage to place 2 of its members in the college football playoff, although both lost in the semifinals. The Big Ten finished with a losing record versus the Southeastern Conference and the Big 12. The Big Ten lost 3 of its 4 bowl matchups versus the SEC. However, the Big Ten did have a 4-2 tally against the Atlantic Coast Conference. As always, the Big Ten dominated the Mid-American Conference, winning 6 of the 7 meetings. Those results included defeating the MAC's champion and runner-up. The Big 12 grabbed a second-place finish by a tiny margin, 6/1000ths of a point, ahead of the Big Ten. Texas Christian's win in the college football playoff semifinal over Michigan, the Big Ten's champion, provided the additional points needed for second place among the 10 FBS conferences. Nevertheless, the Big 12 had the weakest record in bowls, winning only 2 of 7 bowl games. The Southeastern Conference finished atop the rankings in large part due to a winning record against all other FBS conferences. The SEC's members' victories included defeating the champions of the ACC twice, both the champion and the runner-up of the Big 12, in addition to defeating the champions of both the Pacific 12 and the Sun Belt. In conclusion, the Sun Belt Conference has come a long way from the early 2000s. From its inception until very recently, the Sun Belt Conference looked like a bunch of bottom feeders who just served as rent-a-wins and arguably belonged in the FCS. The Sun Belt Conference is no longer the laughingstock of the FBS. The American Athletic Conference made a case for its contention that it should be considered among the power conferences. However, the AAC will need several years of finishing ahead of a Power 5 conference to earn that respect. The quest for elevation will be hurt by the loss of some of its perennially successful members who are bolting for the Big 12. The Big 10 had 2 of its members in the college football playoff for the first time. However, its results in the college football playoff and in out-of-conference games in general lend credence to its detractors that the Big 10 was a very top-heavy conference in 2022. The Southeastern Conference had an outstanding season. In addition to its champion winning the national title, it showed its overall dominance compared to the other 9 FBS conferences. Thus concludes a review of all 10 FBS conferences in the 2022 season.